and Rarity's going to find them. Star Swirl once described raising the sun to me. As one of the few unicorns who could participate in the ceremony without losing his magic forever, he had done it many a time over his life, and he told me that each time was a titanic moment, a struggle to contain the immeasurable force that would warm our world and move it across the heavens that left him exhausted for much of the day afterwards. I never felt it like that. Ever since I first raised the sun, it felt like beckoning a friend and guiding them to where it needed to go. I've had a connection to the sun ever since, a bond so strong we influence another merely by being. Sometimes I realize this bond can be too strong, and my little ponies panic when the forces that threaten Equestria manage to lay me low. Twilight told me what happened the time that Discord captured myself and my sister with his plunder vines. Day and night were one in the sky, the sun trapped in the sky just as I was trapped in his vines. Many ponies learn just how deep the bond between the sun and myself is that day, but few ponies know that this bond works both ways, and that sometimes, when the sun acts up, I feel its effects down here on Equestria. Today was one of those rare days. I look into the mirror, at the yellow range blotches that covered my normally pristine coat, as if I had suddenly grown dapples all over my body. Several around my cutie mark, some flowing together going down my hind legs, another few on the shoulders of my front legs, and a few more near the bottom of those same legs. Then my wings, with the entire marginal coverts tinted that yellow-orange, going up my neck, a few on my cheeks, and even the tips of my ears. Sunspots, Luna called them, those countless years ago when we were still fillies, while howling with laughter, the cheeky thing. I don't like worrying my little ponies, more so because all their worrying is unnecessary. It's not dangerous, just embarrassing. I try my best not to be too vain, but I'm rather proud of my coat. It's a trait my jewel and I share, so on these days I take a little sabbatical and retreat to my chambers, away from public view. A little bit of time off to myself. Canterlot gossips about what I do in this unexpected bit of private time. Oh, the ideas they come up with. But they remain free of worry, and I get a little bit of time to myself. All in all, every pony wins. And so here I was, with my favorite cushion and a rather gripping detective romance Rarity had recommended me at the ready, and Philomena sleeping on her perch in my room. It would have been better if I could get my precious jewel in here with me as well, but she is the last pony I want to worry, or deal with her worry, so I let Raven know her that I would be retreating to my room for the day, and not to worry about me. Which is why I was quite surprised to hear her voice on the other side of the door. "Steadfast, so good to see you again, darling. How was Baltimore?" "I had a great time, Miss Rarity. Thank you for asking. It was good to spend some time with the wife and kids," my ever-trusted guard Steadfast answered, and I smiled. Rarity had let me know Steadfast's wife, Curtainglow, had talked about how much she and her children were missing their husband and father during a fitting session of her dress. A quick chat with Flash Magnus and a few forms later, and Steadfast had a few weeks' worth of leave to spend with his family. "And Hotglow, not too disappointed you couldn't take the good science place, I hope?" The light laugh of the guard's mare rang through the door. "Not at all, my lady. The old scion has a few tricks to teach me yet." It warmed my heart to hear my love and my guards get along so well. I had watched all of my guards when they entered the guard as recruits. I had listened to each of them swear their oaths, seen all of them rise through the ranks since. They were like precious foals to me. They could sometimes be a bit stoic and protective, but Rarity had sauntered her way into all of their hearts with little effort. "Wonderful to hear. Now if you'll excuse me, I would like to see Celestia," Rarity said, and from my end I couldn't help but flick my ears to the door. I had let her know not to worry about me. "I'm sorry, my lady, but the princess is currently resting," I heard Steadfast say. "Ah, Steadfast, always reliable." "Yes, so I have been told, with the words 'don't worry about me' attached," Rarity replied, sarcasm dripping through her words, followed by a tisk I could hear through the door. "I don't suppose that means there's any chance you'll leave it be, Lady Rarity?" Heartglow asked after a moment's pause. I did not like that pause. "About as much chance as you letting poor Downburst be the next time he tries to outperform a Wonderbolt." "He has it coming," the muffled mutter of Heartglow sounded through the doors. "And you won't hear me disagree, Heartglow dear. But just as you will mercilessly tease that stubborn Pegasus, I will comfort my marefriend when she is feeling under the weather." Silence reigned, but I just knew Rarity was giving Heartglow that unyielding gaze she could bring out whenever some pony stood between her and someone she cared about. I could only pray Flash Magnus's training was even more unyielding. Fair point, my lady," Heartglow yielded. Unyielding Rarity 1, Ancient Hero of Equestria and Newest Drill Instructor 0. And I do also recall Celestia telling the guard that she is never too busy for a visit from me, did she not? Rarity asked. And bearer of the sun or not, I swear I could feel my blood freeze. They wouldn't. That she did, my lady, Steadfast answered. They would. My head darted around as I scanned the room for a place to hide, which for a pony as large as me is not an easy feat. My bed seemed to be the only place big enough, but as my ear twitched towards the sound of the door opening, I panicked and just yanked the cover of the bed with my magic, and tried to hide myself as best I could in the middle of my room. Philomena let out an amused squawk, and I'd have sent a stern glare her way, but I couldn't see a thing under the cover. The clip-clopping of hooves told me Rarity had entered the room. The sound stopped, and for a moment everything was quiet again. Then a sigh came from just outside my makeshift hideout. Celestia, dearest, what are you doing? A quick, light-hearted quip was already on my lips, but Rarity continued before I had the chance. And not just this, whatever it is you are doing with your bed cover, what is with this note you sent me? I could hear the tinkling of magic and ruffling of rolled parchment, and realized that Rarity must have brought the letter I sent her when I noticed I would be taking my little hiatus this day. She cleared her throat and began to recite. My dearest Rarity, how are you today? Fine, I hope. I have seen several ponies in court the past few days wearing your work. Truly, my dear, you excel at your profession. Pardon the rambling. I know you are in Canterlot today to check up on your boutique, and I know that we often get together when you are here, but I am afraid that I have come down with something today, and I must cancel. It is nothing dramatic, I assure you, but it is something I have to drag through for the day. You are, of course, welcome to enjoy the hospitality of my castle as always, but I am afraid that I will remain in isolation for the day. Please do not worry. I will be fine, and should you choose to stay, I would love to enjoy breakfast with you tomorrow in the morning, but for today, I will be spending the day by myself. All my love, Celestia. The silence that followed was deafening. I wriggled in my blanket until my head poked through, taking care to keep my spotted ears hidden to look Rarity in the eyes. Oh dear, the glare she aimed at me was fiercer than I expected. I really had upset her with this. Well, she began, in a tone that conveyed frustration with a tiny bit of hurt. At least you are looking at me again, so that is progress at least. I never intended to shut you out, Rarity. And yet you did, Rarity countered, by notes and by guard. Honestly, if it weren't for the entire castle being worried over this, I doubt I would have been able to get anywhere near your chambers. My eyes widened. The entire castle? I repeated. Oh yes, they were all pretty quiet about what it might be, even Blue Blood, but every pony is hoping you will get better soon, and they were most encouraging when I offered to find out how. They worried. I thought the gossip would distract them, but they still worried. Worst of all, my love worried. I just didn't want you to worry, I mewed in defeat. Rarity sighed and lay down in front of me, looking me straight in the eyes with those beautiful blue eyes of hers. And yet, I do, because I love you. I felt my heart skip a beat at those 3 words. I had heard them before, of course, many times, from ponies very dear to me, but how long had it been since I had heard them like this? Too long. I opened my mouth to reply. I wasn't even sure what I was going to say. An apology? An explanation? That I'd loved her too? It didn't matter in the end, because Rarity silenced me with a hoof to my lips. I love you, and so I worry, just as the castle worries because they love you. It's a price that comes with being loved, I'm afraid, but while the castle may resign themselves to wait out this day, and hope you will return to them tomorrow, I am not going to remain content with this. Do you know why? I did not say anything. I merely looked up at Rarity in question. Rarity in return cupped my cheeks and planted a small kiss on my nose. Because I remember that day at a small terrace just across a boutique in Canterlot, where a pony called Celestia with frayed nerves and a rambling voice asked if I would give her the chance of dating me. Rarity smiled. So please, Celestia, don't hide from me. I promised you I would look at Celestia the pony rather than the princess of the sun, but I can't do that if you won't let me. I bit my lip and looked away. This was unfair, entirely unfair. Rarity was right. I did ask her to see me as Celestia the pony, and this was a very Celestia thing. It's nothing serious, just embarrassing. Ah, That is something I have experience with. Do you remember that the second time we ever met was during that year's Grand Galloping Gala? She rolled her eyes, and I giggled at the memory. It had taken quite a while for Blueblood to fix his reputation in Rarity's eyes, and for Rarity to apologize for her gold digging. Neither had come out with any grace that night. I promise I won't tell a single pony, not even the girls, Rarity said, sitting up straight and going through the motions of a pinky promise. Unless Twilight already knows? No, she doesn't. Though I wouldn't be surprised if she suspects. I took a deep breath and let it go. Do you know what is happening with the sun right now? Rarity giggled into her hoof. Goodness, do I? The solar storms and its aftermath is all Twilight has been able to talk about for weeks. The forecasted increase in activity on the surface of the sun has kept her completely captive. The result of drastic changes in magnetic fields, she says. Twilight is keeping you well informed, I smiled. I may have found a reason to be a bit more interested in sun-related talk recently, she added with a wink. So I've been paying extra attention. And you also might have learned over the past few years that the sun and myself are connected, I continued, and Rarity nodded. Yes, that event with Discord's plunder vines made it rather clear that the sun and moon do not like it when something happens to you or Luna. Ah, does that mean that the solar activity has a noticeable effect on you? Oh, how sharp a mind she has. Rarity might not have much interest in scholarly pursuits, but I'm quite sure that had she attended my school, she would have given her classmates a good run for their money. To answer her question, I stood up and tossed aside my bed cover. Oh my love exclaimed, and I could see a hoof being raised to her lips. Here it comes. It's... Will it be a, what has happened to you, Celestia? Maybe a, perhaps you need to lie down, Celestia, followed by an, is there anything I can do, Celestia? Magnifique! Okay, that was new. Oh, yes, such bold breaking of the norm, those yellow and orange colors, like the sun breaking through a field of clouds. And those patterns! Give me a twirl, dearest. I blinked. Pardon? Rarity sat back on her haunches and twirled a hoof in the air. Twirl for me, darling. I felt an amused smile creep onto my muzzle. Goodness, when was the last time some pony asked me to twirl for them? Was there ever such a time? It didn't matter. Just hearing that joy, that excitement from Rarity at seeing me like this, I stopped thinking about it. I twirled, turning round and round in an elegant spin, raising and lowering my wings as I turned to almost dance in place. Rarity just sat, her eyes roaming across my body. It might have looked somewhat perverse to any pony else, but I knew my Rarity. Her eyes weren't looking at just my body. They were looking beyond that. I could see her eyes flicking to my wings, my neck, my barrel, my flank, my legs, my fetlocks, and back again. Her mouth forming wordless sentences as the gears in her mind turned. I stopped spinning just to observe her in turn. Here was one of the most wonderful moments I enjoyed with Rarity, even more so for their, pardon the pun, rarity. To watch Rarity's mind at work on sudden inspiration, seeing all the potential, working out all the details in her mind like a puzzle coming together, until those eyes sparkled with realization, and her voice shouts, Idea! You've found something you like, I see, I said as I smiled warmly. Rarity rushed forward and looped a leg around mine. No time to explain, darling. Inspiration is burning. We must fly. Now, I should note that I am Celestia, Princess of the Day and Alicorn of the Sun. I have the magic of all 3 pony tribes, including the Earth Pony tribe, and have honed that magic for well over 1,000 years. To try and move me against my will is to try and move a mountain. To Rarity, I might as well have been a feather. We dashed to the door, her blue magic throwing it wide open, and we rushed past a shocked Heartglow and smiling Steadfast. I only briefly got the chance to glare at my cheeky guards as we dashed through the hallway. A small part of me was shouting that I was outside my room, on a day like this of all days, but the warmth of Rarity's leg on mine and the rush of running down the hallways hushed that voice into silence. A glint of yellow and red from the corner of my eye told me Philomena was in swift pursuit. Guards snapped to attention, and maids squeaked and jumped to the side as we rushed past Rarity's leaping gallop, putting us at a pace I actually had to put in a bit more effort than my usual shuffle to keep up. Our destination came into view, a pair of otherwise innocuous doors, the same as any other room in this castle's floor, flew open and I was dragged into what Rainbow Dash had dubbed Rarity's royal hidey hole. It was a fairly decent-sized chamber, as far as rooms in my castle are concerned. Ponykins stood scattered around the room, some with dresses but most still naked. Cloth of all types filled the cabinets lining the walls, from easy-to-come-by cloth to the finest of saddle Arabian silks. A drawing easily stood next to a beautiful hoof-carved workstation with the most modern of threading needles as sewing machines stood to the left of the room, while a stage to observe and display any specific works adorned the right. It was, in many ways, a designer's dream. Also, my Rarity has a place to work on any sudden bouts of inspiration when she is visiting me. Never let it be said that I don't use my substantial wealth to spoil those I hold dear to me absolutely rotten. That it also lets me keep Rarity close while she is working, and gives me plenty of opportunities to watch her as she works is a very convenient side benefit. Rarity guided me to the stage, and I climbed up on it. Her horn lit, and a whirlwind of cloth, ribbons, scissors, thread, and needle flew through the room. I remained still in the eye of the storm. Over 1,000 years of experience in having dresses designed having taught me that moving only when directed by the tailor is the best way to avoid any disapproving glances and accidental pokes with tools. Rarity was in her zone, oblivious to anything but her work as the whirlwind moved in her magic. Yes, oranges and reds are essential. Perhaps a touch of black? No. We want to enhance the effect, not distract from it. Oh yes, that shimmer silk is divine. A trill sounded as I saw Philomena circle over Rarity and drop what looked like a bundle of feathers into the whirlwind. Rarity's eyes lit up and she beamed back up at the phoenix. Oh yes, marvelous thinking, Philomena. These are exactly what I need. Philomena trilled again and returned to her perch near the windowsill, preening in pride. Rarity refocused her attention on the storm of cloth and tools, but she spared me a joyous smile. Hold still, darling. This is going to be the work of a lifetime. And still I held, moving only as Rarity directed. Cloth slipped over and around, cut with scissors that flew closely behind. My wings only lifted and lowered by Rarity's magic, as the cloth wove around it to ensure my wings had room. Pins were put in place everywhere, yet always avoiding pricking me with the ease that comes with both the gift of talent and years of experience. Threads and needles followed, tracing slim arcs of reds, oranges, and yellows in the air. I don't know how long the entire process took. It felt like both an age and a minute as I was lost in time watching Rarity work. Eventually, the tools and cloth retreated back to their cabinets and desks, and the glow on Rarity's horn subsided. She was breathing heavier, drained by a combination of heavy magic use and intense concentration on her job, a light patch of sweat on her coat. But despite all of this, Rarity was beaming. Well, darling, have a look, she said, her horn lighting up again as a large mirror floated into view. My jaw dropped even as I sucked in breath, words failing me as I stared into the mirror, and my mind could at best describe the sun itself staring back. The dress was a wild array of yellows and reds, woven into patterns that looked like a huge fire seen from above, or more likely through a telescope pointed at the sun. Even my wings had been addressed, golden arcs covering my wing bones, holding in place the feathers I had seen Philomena give to Rarity, which had been woven into my wings, making my wings appear as if on fire. But the greatest shock came when I turned to look at the dress from the side, and the moment made the fiery patterns shift, as if the flames on my dress were alive and moving. It was a beautiful sight, like the roiling surface of the sun, and the source of the shifting patterns were not the colored fabrics, but my sunspots. My Rarity is a mare of many talents. A generous spirit, a keen business mare, and a talented seamstress. But the greatest of her talents, the one which her cutie mark truly represents, is to take something that makes a pony special, even if the pony does not truly appreciate what she has at first, and polish it until it shines like the brightest of diamonds. And as I spun and turned, watching the colors of my dress dance with my motions, turning me into the very sun I raised every day, I realized that Rarity had given that most precious of gifts to me now. Well, what do you think? Rarity asked, peeking her head around the back of the large mirror. I didn't answer. At least, not with words. My magic flared, and I grabbed the mirror and Rarity both, setting the mirror aside even as I pulled Rarity towards me with an adorable squeak. I snaked my hooves around the smaller mare's back and pulled her in for a deep kiss. Rarity's eyes widened before fluttering shut, and she leaned into the kiss. I kept the kiss for several seconds before I pulled back and looked at her, a wobbly smile on her lips and a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "Well," she said with a small gasp, "I think that suffices for an answer." "Maybe," I answered, "but I'll say it anyway. Thank you, Rarity." Rarity's wobbly smile bloomed into a full one, and she reached up with her head to nuzzle my nose. "You are most welcome, Celestia. I still don't quite understand why you would hide those dapples. They are quite lovely, really, but I hope I have helped you find a new appreciation for them." I nodded. "You did, Rarity, and I am once again sorry for making you worry. It's just that these dapples have always been a source of embarrassment for me. Oh, you must think me such a silly pony." A loud bark of laughter escaped from Rarity. "Ha! Oh, excuse me, but Celestia, darling, you do remember who you are talking to. You are far from the only pony in the world who is worried about how they look, and willing to go through extremes to always look their finest." "Perhaps, but as a princess I began, but a hoof was pressed to my mouth, silenced any more words. "Let me stop you right there. Yes, you are a princess. Even to this very day, and with Twilight, Cadence, and Luna by your side, you are still THE princess for most ponies. 1,000 years of ruling Equestria in peace and prosperity will do that. But if there is one thing our time together has taught me, it is that you are still a pony, Celestia. A pony with her own flaws and imperfections. And that is fine. Luna's heaven knows I am far from perfect myself, but as my friends and I like to say, it is our flaws that make us work." Rarity removed her hoof and smiled up at me. "That day on the terrace where you first showed me the pony behind the crown was the moment I fell for you. I love you for all of you, Celestia, flaws and all." I couldn't help myself. 1,000 butterflies were flying around in my stomach as I pulled Rarity into another deep kiss, a much longer one this time as we both lost ourselves in one another. Eventually, we parted again, for air if nothing else. We held each other and just basked in each other's presence. That is, until a nagging thought crept back into my head. "Rarity?" "Yes, darling?" "It occurs to me that we made a mad dash through the hallways, all the way from my room to your private studio. And we passed a lot of castle staff on the way here. Many guards, and quite a few maids, scribes, and archivists. Likely a few upper-class ponies as well, given the time of day." "Do you think those ponies are still around?" "Most likely. Why do you ask?" I grinned. "Because I have a new dress to show off and brag about. How do you feel about a nice, relaxing walk around the palace garden?" "That sounds divine," Rarity hummed, before her eyes snapped open. "But what will I wear?" Like a bolt of lightning, Rarity tore free from my legs and out the doors of her studio, dashed straight across the hallway and into the royal wardrobe on the other side. As I laughed at the growing pile of rejected dresses forming in the royal wardrobe, I walked into the hallway, unconcerned about my appearance for the first time in well over 1,000 years. No, not unconcerned. Proud. Those very dapples that had been a source of embarrassment for centuries, I now wanted to show off, like a polished diamond wants to shine in the sunlight. Dozens of questions about the dress would await me once Rarity and I started that walk, and 1,000 on the dapples, but they would be worth it, because Rarity had made me shine, and every time the sun would act up from then on, I would put on that dress and we would go for a long walk, because I love showing off that which I love, my dapples and Rarity both. Thank you for listening in. Please like the video if you enjoyed the reading, and subscribe to be informed about future readings. Until next time, stay tuned.